The Sideshow Within, Leroy McKenzie and the Price of Admission. Step right up, hurry, hurry, the barker's voice echoes in my mind, a relentless loop from a song I can't shake. It's funny, isn't it? How life can feel like a perpetual sideshow, a spectacle of broken hearts and million-year tears, all playing out under the big top of our own experiences. And just like the song says, the price of admission? Sometimes, it feels like it costs us everything. I think about Leroy McKenzie a lot these days. Not the real Leroy, whoever he might be. But the Leroy that lives in my head, the embodiment of that song. He's the man with the broken heart, the girl who collects shattered pieces of love. He's the one who's been crying for a million years. He's me, in a way, and maybe he's a little bit of you too. We all have a sideshow within us, a curated collection of our deepest wounds and most vulnerable moments. We parade them out, sometimes unknowingly, for the world to see. We build elaborate tents around them, complete with flashing lights and dramatic music, hoping someone, anyone, will understand the depth of our pain. We whisper, 50 cents, just 50 cents to see what life has done to me. But here's the rub, our internal sideshow isn't entertainment. It's not a spectacle meant for gawking. It's a cry for help disguised as a performance. We become so accustomed to the role of the broken-hearted, the tear-stained, the one who's been through the ringer, that we forget we can step down from the stage. We forget that the show is optional. Leroy, in my mind, is trapped in his sideshow. He's so used to the spotlight, so accustomed to the gasps and whispers, that he doesn't know how to leave. His broken heart has become his identity. The million years of tears? They're not just sadness anymore, they're a part of his narrative. And I get it. It's terrifying to dismantle the stage, to turn off the lights, to face the quiet emptiness of what might be. What if no one recognizes us without the costumes and makeup? What if, stripped bare of our pain, we're just ordinary? But what if, just what if, the real magic happens after the show ends? What if, in the quiet solitude of our own company, we begin to heal? What if we discover that our worth isn't tied to the dramatic retelling of our traumas? The song promises a guarantee, guaranteed to make you cry. And it's true. Living in the sideshow will make you cry. But it won't necessarily make you better. It might even keep you stuck. So, let's talk about Leroy. Let's talk about the sideshow within. Let's talk about how to find the exit, how to step down from the stage, and how to start writing a new story, one that's not defined by heartbreak and tears, but by resilience, hope, and the quiet strength of simply being. Because maybe, just maybe, the most extraordinary show of all is the one where we finally learn to love ourselves, broken pieces and all. And that, my friends, is a show worth attending. No ticket required. The Sideshow Within, Leroy McKenzie and the Price of Admission, continued. Leroy, my imagined Leroy, spent years in his sideshow. He perfected his performance. He knew the precise moment to let a single tear roll down his cheek, the exact inflection in his voice to convey the depths of his despair. He became a master of his pain, a virtuoso of vulnerability. The audience, both real and imagined, ate it up. They gasped, they wept, they whispered about the tragic tale of Leroy McKenzie. But backstage, in the quiet moments between performances, Leroy felt empty. The applause faded, the lights dimmed, and he was left with the echo of his own sadness. He'd built his identity on his suffering, and now he didn't know who he was without it. He'd become so accustomed to the role of the broken man that he'd forgotten how to be whole. One day, a woman named Elara wandered into his tent. She wasn't like the other spectators. She didn't gawk or whisper. She sat quietly, her eyes filled not with pity, but with understanding. After the show, she didn't rush to leave. She waited for Leroy. Your performance was powerful, she said, her voice soft. But I've seen it before. Leroy frowned. Seen it before? No one has a story like mine. Elara smiled gently. We all have stories, Leroy. And some of us, we get so caught up in telling them, we forget to live them. Her words struck a chord. Leroy had been so busy performing his pain, he'd forgotten to heal it. He'd become so attached to his narrative of suffering that he was afraid to let it go. What if he wasn't special anymore? What if he was just Leroy? Elara continued, your pain is real, Leroy. No one can take that away from you. But it doesn't define you. It's just one chapter in your story. You have the power to write the rest. That night, Leroy couldn't sleep. Elara's words echoed in his mind. He thought about his broken heart, the million years of tears. He realized that he'd been using his pain as a shield, a way to keep people at a distance. He was afraid of being vulnerable, truly vulnerable, without the protection of his suffering. The next day, Leroy did something radical. He canceled his show. He took down the tent, packed away his costumes, and stepped out into the sunlight. He didn't know where he was going, but for the first time in a long time, he felt a flicker of hope. He started small. He talked to Elara. He talked to other people, not about his pain, but about their lives, their dreams, their fears. He learned to listen, to connect, to find joy in the shared experience of being human. It wasn't easy. There were days when the old familiar sadness crept back in, when he longed for the comfort of his sideshow. But he kept going. He learned to forgive himself, to accept his imperfections, to embrace the messy, beautiful reality of life. Leroy's journey wasn't a fairy tale. He still carried scars, but they no longer defined him. He learned that vulnerability wasn't weakness, but courage. He learned that healing wasn't about erasing the past, but about creating a future where pain didn't hold the starring role. Moral of the story, we all have a sideshow within us. It's okay to acknowledge our pain, to share our stories. But we can't let our suffering become our identity. We have the power to choose what we focus on. We can choose to stay in the spotlight of our pain, or we can choose to step down from the stage and write a new story, a story of resilience, hope, and the courage to be ourselves, broken pieces and all. The most extraordinary show of all isn't the one that makes us cry, but the one where we learn to love ourselves unconditionally. And that, my friends, is a show worth living.